You have seen the claim. It is all over the internet, all over social media, passed around every gardening group there is. Do not throw out your used coffee grounds. Instead, sprinkle them around your hydrangeas and watch those flowers turn a brilliant, gorgeous blue. Free fertilizer, free color, straight from your morning cup. It sounds perfect. It sounds like genius. It sounds like exactly the kind of clever, thrifty, eco-friendly trick we all want to be true. So today, we are going to find out if it actually is. What really happens when you feed your hydrangeas coffee grounds. And I am going to give you the honest truth, the real science, not the recycled internet folklore. And here is what almost nobody tells you. The truth has a twist. Because the question everyone asks is, will coffee grounds turn my hydrangeas blue? But that is the wrong question. The right question, the one that actually matters, is whether those coffee grounds are helping your plant at all or quietly hurting it. Because there is a real possibility, backed by actual research, that dumping your coffee grounds around your hydrangeas is doing damage, stunting the plant, suppressing its growth. The opposite of what you intended. So this is not just a myth-busting video. It is a rescue mission, in case you have been doing this all along. By the end, you are going to know 4 things: whether coffee grounds really can change your hydrangea's color, what they actually do to the plant, for better and for worse, the one right way to use them, if you use them at all. And if you genuinely want those blue blooms, the real method that actually works, that nobody is putting on a viral video because it is not quite as charming as a scoop of coffee grounds. But before any of it, you have to understand one thing about hydrangeas. Because the entire coffee grounds myth is built on a misunderstanding of it. And once you see it, the whole picture changes. Let me show you what it is. Here is the one thing you have to understand, and it is the misunderstanding the entire coffee myth is built on. Turning a hydrangea blue is not really about acid. It is about aluminum. Let me explain, because this changes everything. Most people think the story is simple. Acidic soil makes blue flowers, alkaline soil makes pink. And that is not wrong, but it is only half the story, and it is the wrong half to focus on. Here is what is actually happening. The blue color in a hydrangea comes from aluminum. The plant pulls aluminum ions up out of the soil. Those ions bind with the pigment in the flower, and that is what turns it blue. No aluminum, no blue. Full stop. So where does the acid come in? The acid is not the thing that colors the flower. The acid is the key that unlocks the aluminum. Aluminum sits locked up and unavailable in the soil until the pH drops low enough, around 5.5 or below, and only then does that aluminum become soluble, free for the roots to take up. So acidic soil does not make the flower blue. Acidic soil frees the aluminum, and the aluminum makes the flower blue. Which means turning a hydrangea blue actually requires 2 separate things to be true at the same time. The soil has to be acidic, and the soil has to actually contain aluminum. If you have acid but no aluminum, you get nothing. And there is a third condition on top of both. Only certain hydrangeas can change color at all. The big leaf mopheads and lace caps, and the mountain types. White hydrangeas will never change, no matter what you do. Panicle and oak leaf types will not either. So the real question, do coffee grounds turn hydrangeas blue, is secretly 3 questions. Do you have a type that can change? Do you have aluminum in your soil? And can coffee grounds even lower your pH in the first place? Hold on to all 3. And do me a favor, drop a comment and tell me what type of hydrangea you have and what you have heard about coffee grounds, because I want to know how far this myth has spread. Now, let's look at why the myth is so believable in the first place. So let's start by being fair to the myth, because this is not a stupid belief. It is actually a very reasonable sounding chain of logic, and that is exactly why it has spread so far and stuck so hard. Let me walk you through the thinking, because on the surface, every link in the chain seems solid. Link 1. Coffee is acidic. Everybody knows this. That morning cup is tart, it can upset your stomach, it clearly has some acid to it. True enough. Link 2. Hydrangeas need acidic soil to turn blue. And as we just covered, there is real truth in that. Low pH is part of the equation. Link 3. Therefore, if you put something acidic, like coffee, into the soil around your hydrangea, you will lower the pH, and you will get blue flowers. And link 4, the part that makes it irresistible. Coffee grounds are free. You are throwing them away every single morning anyway. So this is not just effective, it is thrifty. It is eco-friendly. It recycles your waste, and it saves you a trip to the garden center. It is the perfect garden hack. Free input, beautiful output, good for the planet. Of course people share it. Of course it spreads. And I want to be honest with you here, because this channel does not just tear things down. There is a real kernel of truth buried in this. Coffee grounds are organic matter. Organic matter is genuinely good for soil. Adding organic material to your soil is a real, legitimate way to gradually support healthier plants. So the instinct, put this natural, free material into my garden, is not a bad instinct at all. But here is where it all comes apart. Because that chain of logic I just walked you through has a broken link right in the middle. A link that seems obviously true, that almost everyone accepts without question, and that turns out to be, according to the actual soil science, essentially false. And it is link 3. The idea that coffee grounds will lower your soil's pH. That is where the whole thing falls apart. Let me show you why. Here is the broken link. The used coffee grounds you dump around your plants are not actually acidic. And this surprises almost everyone, so let me explain exactly why. Yes, brewed coffee, the liquid in your cup, is acidic, sitting around 4.8 to 5.1 on the pH scale. But here is the thing people miss. That acid is water-soluble, which means when you brew your coffee, the acid washes out of the grounds and into your cup. It goes into the liquid you drink. So what is left behind in the filter, the spent grounds, has had most of its acidity rinsed right out of it. And when soil scientists actually measure those spent grounds, they find them to be very close to neutral. Linda Brewer, a soil scientist with Oregon State University Extension, puts the pH of spent coffee grounds at 6.2 to 6.9. That is barely acidic. That is almost exactly neutral. It is nowhere near the acidity you would need to shift your soil and free up aluminum. Now, someone always says, fine, it is only slightly acidic, but if I add it every single day, for months and months, surely it adds up and eventually lowers the pH. It is a fair question, and it was put directly to Brewer. Would putting coffee grounds out daily, for months, eventually lower the soil pH? Her answer was one word: no. Her bottom line is about as blunt as science gets. Coffee grounds do not affect soil pH. And if they do not affect your soil pH, then they cannot free up the aluminum. And if they cannot free up the aluminum, they cannot turn your hydrangea blue. The chain is broken. The whole mechanism the myth depends on simply does not exist. Now, in the interest of total honesty, because that is the whole point of this channel, I will tell you there is a minority view. A few horticulturists and some grower trials suggest that over a long time, consistent coffee grounds might nudge the pH down just slightly as part of building up organic matter. But even the people who make that argument agree on the punchline. Coffee grounds alone will essentially never turn your hydrangea blue. Every single one of them says that to get real, reliable blue, you have to add actual aluminum sulfate, or elemental sulfur. The grounds, at very best, are a bit player, not the star. So that settles the color question. As a way to turn your hydrangeas blue, coffee grounds are, for all practical purposes, a myth. But here is where this video takes its turn. Because so far, we have only established that coffee grounds do nothing for the color. The real question is what they do to the plant itself. And that is where the truth gets genuinely surprising and a little alarming. So, here is the twist. The real truth. This whole video was built to tell you. Coffee grounds may not just be useless on your hydrangeas, they may actually be hurting them. And this is the part almost no viral video ever mentions, because it is not charming, and it does not fit the free miracle hack story. But it is real, and it is backed by actual research. The problem has a name, and you already know it well. Caffeine. Here is what people get wrong. They assume that once you have brewed your coffee, the caffeine is gone, left in the cup. It is not. Spent coffee grounds still contain a significant amount of caffeine. One study out of the University of Navarra measured up to about 8 milligrams of caffeine per gram of spent grounds. That is not a trace. That is a meaningful dose, sitting right there in the material you are sprinkling around your plant. And here is why that matters. Caffeine is not just a stimulant for people. In the plant world, caffeine is a weapon. It is what scientists call an allelopathic chemical. The coffee plant produces it, in part, to poison the ground around itself, to suppress and weaken any competing plants trying to grow nearby. Caffeine is, quite literally, a natural herbicide, a growth suppressant. So when you spread caffeine-containing coffee grounds around your hydrangea, you are introducing a chemical whose entire biological purpose is to stunt plant growth. And the research bears this out. Study after study has shown caffeine suppresses germination and slows plant growth. My favorite is a paper whose title says, "Everything you need to know." It is called, and I am quoting the actual study, "Applying spent coffee grounds directly to urban agriculture soils greatly reduces plant growth." Greatly reduces. That is the finding. Not helps, not neutral. Greatly reduces. And caffeine is not even the only problem. There are 3 more. First, if you use fresh, unused grounds instead of spent ones, thinking fresher is better, you make it worse on 2 fronts. Fresh grounds are genuinely acidic enough to burn plant tissue, and they carry the strongest caffeine load of all. Growers who know this will tell you flatly, never use fresh grounds on your plants. Second, nitrogen tie-up. When you work a lot of undecomposed coffee grounds into the soil, the microbes that break them down have to pull nitrogen out of the surrounding soil to do the job. That is called nitrogen immobilization, and while it is happening, that nitrogen is locked away, unavailable to your hydrangea. So the very plant you are trying to feed can end up starved of nitrogen, with yellowing leaves and stalled growth. And third, compaction. Coffee grounds are made of very fine particles. Pile them on in a thick layer, and they pack down into a dense, crusty mat that actually repels water and blocks air from reaching the roots. So instead of a nice, breathable soil, you get a suffocating crust sitting right over the root zone. So let's add it all up. You set out to help your hydrangea and turn it blue. Instead, the color does not change. A natural herbicide suppresses the plant's growth, the microbes rob it of nitrogen, and a crust of fine grounds smothers its roots. That free, thrifty, well-meaning hack can leave you with a stunted, struggling, yellowing plant. The exact opposite of what you wanted. Now, before you swear off coffee grounds forever, stay with me, because there is a right way to use them, and I am going to give it to you. But first, a quick word. Quick one, because this whole video is really about something bigger than coffee. The internet is absolutely flooded with kitchen cabinet garden hacks exactly like this one. Pour this on your plants, sprinkle that around your roots. And most of them are the same story we just uncovered. Half true, half myth, and sometimes quietly harmful. And the one I get asked about more than any other, after coffee grounds, is hydrogen peroxide, which is exactly why I put together the hydrogen peroxide playbook. It does for that brown bottle precisely what this video just did for coffee grounds. It separates the real, science-backed garden uses from the internet nonsense, gives you the exact dilution for each of the 31 genuine uses, so you are never guessing, and, just as importantly, spells out the 5 things peroxide will not do, so you do not damage a plant trying. Real horticulture, not myths, with a clip-and-pin chart for your shed wall. 25 pages, $27. Link in the description. Now stay with me, because I promised you the other half of this. Coffee grounds are not useless. There is one genuinely right way to use them. And then, if you truly want those blue blooms, the real method that actually works. Let me give you both. So here is the good news. Coffee grounds are not garbage, and you do not have to throw them out. There is one genuinely correct way to use them in the garden, and it solves every single problem we just talked about, all at once. Compost them first. Here is why this works so beautifully. Remember the 2 big problems, the caffeine and the nitrogen tie-up. When you add coffee grounds to a compost pile and let them fully break down, the microorganisms in that pile digest the caffeine, breaking it down and neutralizing it. The natural herbicide is disarmed. And that nitrogen tie-up problem? It happens while the grounds are decomposing. So if you let them finish decomposing in the compost pile, instead of in the soil around your plant, the nitrogen gets released back out. And finished compost actually delivers nutrients rather than stealing them. So composted coffee grounds are the opposite of raw ones. Safe instead of harmful. Feeding instead of starving. And that finished compost is genuinely good for your hydrangea. It improves the soil structure, feeds the soil life, and over the long haul, adding organic matter like this can very gently, very slowly nudge the soil in a good direction. That is the real, legitimate benefit hiding underneath the myth. So treat your spent grounds as a green material for the compost bin. That is the answer. Every reputable source lands in the same place. The safest, best way to use coffee grounds is to compost them first. Now, if you insist on using them directly, without composting, here are the rules to do the least harm. Use spent grounds, never fresh. Use only a thin scattering, no more than about ½ an inch, never a thick layer. Scratch them lightly into the soil surface so they do not form that water-repellent crust. Keep them away from the base and the crown of the plant. And never, ever put them near seedlings or young plants, which are the most vulnerable of all to that caffeine. But understand what you are doing even then. At best, you are adding a little organic matter and a tiny bit of nitrogen. You are not changing the color. You are not performing magic. You are just lightly amending the soil. So that is the truth about the grounds themselves. But I promised you one more thing. If you actually want those blue blooms, here is the method that really works. So you have decided you genuinely want those deep blue blooms. Here is the method that actually works. It is not as charming as a scoop of coffee grounds, but it delivers, and it is worth doing right. Step 1. Before you do anything else, test your soil and confirm your variety. This is the step everyone skips, and it is the most important one. Remember the 3 conditions from the beginning. Get a cheap soil test kit and find out 2 things. Do you have a hydrangea that can even change color, a big leaf mop head, lace cap, or mountain type? And what is your pH right now? If you have a white hydrangea or a panicle, stop here. No amount of anything will turn it blue. It simply cannot. Step 2. Lower the pH. For real. To free up that aluminum, you need to get your soil down to about 5.2 to 5.5. The tool for that is elemental sulfur, worked into the soil according to the label. It works gradually over a couple of months as soil microbes convert it, so it is a slow, steady acidifier, not a quick fix. Step 3, and this is the one the acid-only crowd forgets. Provide the aluminum itself. Because remember, acid alone is useless if there is no aluminum in your soil to unlock. So, the real workhorse for blue hydrangeas is aluminum sulfate, because it does both jobs at once. It acidifies the soil, and it delivers the actual aluminum the flower needs to turn blue. The common recipe is about 1 tablespoon of aluminum sulfate dissolved in a gallon of water applied to the base of the plant once a month for a few months in spring. And step 4, patience. This is not an overnight change. A hydrangea sets its flower buds in late summer for the following year, so you adjust the soil in fall or early spring, and you wait for next season's blooms to show the result. Slow and steady and real. That is the honest method. Less fun than the coffee myth, but it is the one that actually turns your hydrangeas blue. So let me pull the whole truth together. Before we finish, do one thing for me. Think of one person you know who has been faithfully dumping their coffee grounds around their hydrangeas, waiting for blue flowers that never come. Send them this video. Just the link. It might save their plant and settle the argument once and for all. Now, here is the whole truth, laid out plainly. As a way to turn your hydrangeas blue, coffee grounds are, for all practical purposes, a myth. The acid washes out in brewing. The spent grounds are basically neutral, and they will not lower your soil pH enough to matter. And even if they could, pH is only half the story. Without aluminum in the soil, there is no blue, no matter what you pour on. As a soil amendment, coffee grounds are fine, but only when you compost them first and use them sparingly. That is the one right way. And used raw, piled on thick, straight around the plant, they can genuinely hurt it. The leftover caffeine suppresses growth, the decomposition steals nitrogen, and a crust of fine grounds can smother the roots. But here is the bigger lesson, the one worth carrying out of this video into your whole garden. The most appealing free hacks, the ones that sound the cleverest and spread the fastest, are exactly the ones you should check the hardest. Because free, easy, and natural is a wonderful story. And it is not the same thing as true, real horticulture, every time, over internet folklore. And listen, a hydrangea can bloom gloriously for decades, the big mop head by the porch, blue or pink or purple. You have earned real answers about how to care for it, not a viral myth that wastes your grounds, your time, and maybe your plant. So subscribe and stick around. We do this the honest way here in the Forgotten Knowledge Library. Real science, exact amounts, and we tell you straight when something is just a myth, no matter how popular it is. It is free, and it always will be. Next time, another famous garden hack put to the test. What actually works, and what people swear by that simply does not. Now go test your soil, compost your grounds, and do not believe everything the internet tells you to pour on your plants. I will see you in the next one.